Do you know why it's so hard to find a good self-defense school? It's because the term self-defense has become so watered down and been co-opted by so many people to mean so many different things, it basically means nothing anymore. In fact, the more you learn about self-defense, the more you realize that the term is essentially just marketing. Which is funny. I own a school that says self-defense on the building. In order for us to talk about self-defense, we have to establish what we mean by that term. And I think, and there's nothing wrong with this, what most people mean is preparing for an unlawful attack by a criminal. Someone assaulting you, someone trying to kidnap you, someone doing something like that against your will, and you're not part of the problem and you didn't contribute to that. That's what most people, I think, mean when they say self-defense. If you would define it differently or you have something to add to that, comment down below because I'm gonna be following up on this. Which brings me to the sponsor of today's video, Leatherback Gear. Leatherback Gear makes this backpack. This is the Sport One. They got a couple of different ones. I'll put a link down in the description below if you wanna check it out. But it's a bulletproof backpack. It zips off and then you put this on there. And now I've got a bulletproof backpack. And it's also a backpack, so you can carry all your things necessary to be prepared, whether it's your gun or whether it's your medical supplies or it's a grappling hook. I've done a full review of this thing. If you want to check it out, I'll link it up there. But it actually is a little more practical than you think. You might think this is like paranoia stuff. I mean, I am a crazy person. I just don't want to look like a crazy person. That's why I like the Sport One version. They have more tactical looking versions for you tack daddies out there. This one has a 3A panel, which is not gonna stop, rocket launchers, but it's gonna stop the most likely threats that you're gonna run into as far as being assaulted by a violent criminal. And preparing for what's most likely, I think, is more important than like preparing for the worst. I'll put a link down in the description below to Leatherback Gear. They are surprisingly affordable. But right now, there's some people taking issue with the idea that you shouldn't prepare for the worst, you should prepare for what's most likely. And I think that those people are losers that can't fight. Maybe they're not. I know a lot of really awesome, cool dudes who fight really well that do talk like that, but they've also devoted their entire life to this stuff. Let's pare this thing down and talk about what a self-defense school actually, to be a self-defense school, would have to prepare you for. You would need an expert in striking, grappling. You need a strength and conditioning guy because being fit is self-defense. You need an expert in firearms. You need an expert in edge weapons. You need an expert in impact weapons. You need an expert in how to defend against all of those things. You need an expert in situational awareness. You need an expert in reading pre-attack indicators, someone who knows body language, someone who's been involved in a lot of real-life altercations, someone who's experienced criminal attacks, someone who can explain to you what it's going to feel like when it happens, the adrenaline, the pressure, the nerves, someone who can explain to you the legal aftermath, someone who can explain to you the laws in your area, when you're legally justified to use the techniques or the weapons that you're armed with, and when you're not. You need first aid training. You need defensive driving skills. You probably need to practice running and sprinting. You probably need to learn a little bit about climbing. You need coaching on what to say on the phone to the 911 operator. You would need someone who was an expert in combining various elements from each of those things. So you'd need a guy who could teach you not only how to punch, but then how to punch your way into a takedown and then do the takedown. And then that guy would have to teach you how to not get taken down. And if you have a weapon, a guy has to teach you how to get that out while you're fighting someone, or keep someone else from getting a weapon out while you're fighting them. And if you can't devote your whole life to all of that, that's fine. That's okay. Training can be fun. It can be a hobby. Which brings me to the whole reason that you can't find a good self-defense school, and that's money. I'm only an expert in 2 of those things, and I charge $100 an hour. It would be astronomically expensive to have one-stop shop, one school that teaches all of self-defense. I've met and trained with the best people in the industry. Amber Steklinski, Ryan Hoover, Eli Knight, Craig Douglas, Mike Donvito, Aaron Giannetti.
Techniques don't work. Like, that's not a thing.
These are people that I have met and trained with, and they have the strongest grasp on what self-defense really is, and most of them don't even really love that term. We are really only using that term as a shorthand to reach people who have a more limited understanding of self-defense. And again, that's about money. I told you earlier that it's marketing. Just because it's marketing doesn't mean it's bad. Marketing is not inherently evil. You might think, I don't do any marketing. Well, no one knows who you are, and you're not helping anyone. We have to make a living, so yes, we put words like self-defense or combatives or Krav Maga on our building just so people will kind of understand what we do. Because when people call and ask questions, the more honest and forthcoming I am with them about what self-defense really is, the less likely they are to come in. No one wants to do any of that. They just want to learn moves. And we've got moves. There's lots of moves. But connecting them is the issue. So if you're going to a self-defense school where they're like, this is real self-defense, this is real combatives, they're going to show you moves. All the really great self-defense instructors I know spend a large percentage of their time engaged in more sportive pursuits. So when a self-defense instructor doesn't do any of those things, I almost certainly know that that's not a real self-defense school. But don't worry, Tactical Ted down there in the comments. I'm not going to let BJJ off the hook either, because when you call up those places, they'll say, oh yeah, absolutely, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is great for self-defense. And this applies to all the combat sport-based martial arts. I just like picking on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because it's more fun. They'll say, oh, BJJ is great for self-defense. It was designed for smaller, weaker people to defeat larger, stronger opponents. Are we punching each other in the face during rolling? No. Is anyone randomly introducing weapons? Probably not. And if they are, they're not doing it with regularity. In fact, a lot of times in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class, they'll give lip service to, well, in this position, if it were self-defense and they were punching, you could, get the head and arm and do that. But most Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu programs aren't doing that regularly enough for you to learn that skill. They're not introducing weapons regularly enough for you to learn those skills. And they're not going to spend time rolling in their regular clothes, except maybe once a year, just so they have some content to post on Instagram. But to throw BJJ and combat sport another bone, guy who devotes his life to a combat sport is probably better prepared to fight for his life than a guy who's dedicated his life to techniques that he can never practice. But for that martial arts practitioner to really claim that they train in self-defense, they're going to have to spend time finding out what happens to their art and what happens to their techniques when they spar in their regular clothes, when they roll with a purse on, when they wrestle on a couch, or in the rain, in the mud, over a gun. They're going to have to spend time in a classroom finding out the truth, the real truth about the legalities surrounding self-defense, not this I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6 nonsense. You'd have to know what happens to your skills when you're fighting over a knife, fighting over a taser, fighting over a freaking baseball bat. You'd have to know what it feels like to get exposed to pepper spray. And there's just no way, there's no possible place, there's nowhere on this planet that all of that is taught in one school. It would cost like thousands of dollars a month to train there. So it might kind of sound like what I'm claiming is that the schools that do advertise themselves as self-defense schools are lying to you to get your money. They're not. They're marketing themselves, which we all do that. Everybody does that. Ryan Hoover is famous for saying self-defense is for suckers. He teaches people how to fight. Mike Don Vito will tell you straight to your face, I don't teach self-defense, I teach skills. He doesn't purport to teach you the correct or appropriate time to use that. He just teaches the mechanical skills of how to fillet people. Real self-defense training will require you to cobble together your own program from multiple sources. There's no one school. When I want to learn something about jiu-jitsu, I ask Eli Knight. If I'm curious about when to go for my gun while grappling with somebody, I'm going to talk to Craig Douglas. If I want to figure out a way to affect the balance of a larger, stronger opponent, I'm going to talk to Amber Sliklinski. If I want to know how to train a certain muscle group and how that muscle group can impact my grappling ability and which muscles I can use to push around a dude, I'm going to ask Aaron Giannetti. And if I want to know how to piss a lot of people off in a short amount of time by telling the truth, I'm going to follow in Ryan Hoover's footsteps. So this is not to discourage you from training in your one place, but more a call, if you're serious about self-defense, to begin training in other places. But again, that's only if you enjoy it or it's your job. And if you are a self-defense instructor and you're not doing that, you are a loser and you can't fight. And I don't think there's any exceptions to that, because everybody I know that's good that I would want to learn from does that. 100% of them. You might be a specialist. You might be super good at boxing or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or sword cutting or something, but you're not a self-defense instructor. And if your self-defense instructor is not regularly disappearing to go to training of his own, I mean him too. Thank you to the sponsor of this video, Leatherback Gear. I'll put a link down in the description below to them. If you want more fitness tips, self-defense techniques, gear reviews, as well as concepts and principles that make you hard to hurt, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications.